A country that has been closed off to the outside for much of its history, China, is now inviting nations of the world here to showcase their cultures. Hi, I'm Vicki Liviakis in China, and this is Shanghai World Expo. At the World Expo, countries build architectural wonders on a massive chunk of prime Shanghai real estate. Inside, bold visions of the future, a future with better cities and better lives for those who live in them. Nations try to make their best impression on tens of millions of Chinese eager for contact with the outside world. And China's biggest city is forever changed and left with a new iconic landmark. Watch as history is made at the Shanghai World Expo. Think of the World Expo as the Olympics, but without the sports. Nations gather in a gesture of goodwill to share their cultures.
National participants in World Expositions have an excellent opportunity to showcase their cultures, their industry, their vision of the future for their people, and to by and large stand tall among nations and present themselves well.
So far, there have been 84 World Expos, sometimes known as World's Fairs. Each expo must have a theme. London hosted the world's first expo in 1851. Its theme was the great exhibition of the works of industries of all nations. Some World's Fair themes marked historic anniversaries, like 100 years of American independence at the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition of 1876. Chicago's 1893 exposition commemorated the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World. San Francisco held the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition to celebrate the completion of the Panama Canal and to demonstrate its recovery from the 1906 earthquake. But beyond themes, World Fairs became better known as events where people could experience new technology that could change the human experience. The 1893 exposition in Chicago presented electricity as the future's primary power source. In 1904, at the St. Louis Expo, X-ray technology was unveiled that revolutionized the medical industry. And at the New York Expo in 1939, the world saw the first images broadcast on television. Flash forward almost 150 years after the first World Expo to 2010, the biggest World Expo in history is taking place in Shanghai, China. The pavilion site is over 2 square miles. More than 200 nations and corporations have built pavilions, many of them architectural works of art. When it comes to that theme of better city, better life, different countries have different interpretations of what it means to go green. Romania here, their spin is a green apple. Among the European pavilions, if you make it to the top of the Swiss pavilion, you can ride the chairlift. Off in the distance there, that is the Spanish pavilion, and the skin of it is made of all recycled material. Over there, that's the Polish pavilion, and if it looks like paper cutting, well, it is, because that's the national folk art. Some of the pavilions are pretty obvious, others are a bit more mysterious. Take, for instance, the Singapore Pavilion. If you're still stumped, think music box, only a really big music box. Some of the ideas behind pavilion architecture are more abstract than others. The Israeli pavilion is made up of 2 materials, glass and stone, and it's meant to evoke 2 hands clasping together. You see it? If you've ever blown on a dandelion and watched all the seeds scatter, well, that's the general idea behind the UK pavilion, only they've taken it to the extreme. China has spent $58 billion to host the event. It's moved heaven and earth to improve infrastructure. The expo will last 6 months, from May to October 2010. In that time, more than 70 million people will walk through the gates. More than 95% of those people will be Chinese, most of whom have never left China. For them, it will be their first direct contact with the cultures of the world.
At an expo, the thing that people really seem to come away with, especially children, is sort of ideas and hope and the ideas of progress and their impressions of other countries.
The Expo's host city, Shanghai, is a rapidly expanding urban monster, barely recognizable to those who lived here 20 years ago. With that expansion have come monster problems, pollution, traffic, and other challenges to the quality of life. It's fitting, then, that the theme of the Shanghai World Expo is Better City, Better Life, because that's just what most of the people who live here want. Looking back at Shanghai's history, it seems like a city destined to host the World Expo. Shanghai has always been the outside world's gateway into China. Located at the mouth of the Yangtze River, it was a prime location for Western ships to dock and trade as early as the mid-1800s. Shanghai became the place where Western traders came to make massive fortunes. Those Western businessmen also made a permanent impact on Shanghai's skyline. If you look at those buildings behind me, you'd think we were in London, Paris, or Vienna, and that's the general idea. The first Westerners who came to Shanghai brought along their culture and their architectural style with them. This row of old world Western architecture is Shanghai's Bund District, the city's most famous area. Peter Hibbert is a historian who has lived in Shanghai for 24 years. He's an expert on the Bund District. Peter, for someone who has never seen the Bund, what is the Bund?
Okay, well, the Bund was basically a muddy foreshore till the British came in the 1840s and built it up into the finest promenade in Asia. And when largely rich Americans started turning up in the 1920s on their cruise liners, it was their first taste of China. It was China's front door. And they'd see Europe and they'd see great buildings, but they wouldn't see any temples or pagodas in sight.
The Bund became Shanghai's business center.
You know, I think it's a place that in the 1850s, there was one British trader here, also dealt in property. And he said, I'm here to make as much money as quickly as possible and get out.
And what was the most amazing thing to see was when they sandblasted 30 years of dust off of those buildings on the riverfront, because they were transformed into what you see now. I'm sure you filmed this. These beautiful, gleaming, and they have wonderful architectural detail, the stone carvings, the tile work, the metal work, everything. It's just absolutely extraordinary. And from that moment, everything started to change.
The Bund became the most prestigious part of the city, with high-end businesses staking out turf here. And when Shanghai won the bid to host the World Expo, the city put much of the Bund under wraps for nearly 3 years. They spent $70 million to restore the famed district.
There's been 2 years or so of renovations on the Bund. Basically, there's too much traffic, too confusing, and not kind on human eyes. And so there's been a massive and very successful project to reduce the number of vehicles, a number of lanes of traffic, and install a really nice promenade for people to enjoy.
What a difference a year makes. When I was here last, that building in back of me, you couldn't even tell what it was. It was shrouded in netting. And now, here it is, the Peace Hotel, restored along with the Bund to its former glory. It wasn't enough to restore the buildings. The city also wanted to restore some quality of life. Right now, we're in Shanghai's historic Bund District. Over there, some 4 lanes of traffic. Now, if it looks busy now, imagine just about a year ago, all this was 11 lanes of extremely congested traffic. It has since been replaced by this lovely public walkway. So you ask yourself, where did all that traffic go? Right underneath. The city spent 2 years building this double-decker 45-foot diameter tunnel beneath the walkway. 3 lanes on top, 3 lanes down below. With the tunnel complete, throngs of people can enjoy a nice afternoon walk where 7 lanes of traffic once were. They can also get a more tranquil appreciation of the dichotomy of Shanghai's history, old and new. To really experience the contrast between old Shanghai and new, all you have to do is stand right here along the banks of the river. On one side is Shanghai's past, and then across the Huangpu River, Shanghai's future. The Shanghai World's Expo Better City, Better Life theme has already become a self-fulfilling prophecy, at least in the Bund District. At the Expo, it's clear that the predominant idea of how we get a better city is through green technology. Green is everywhere at the World Expo, especially on pavilion rooftops. Quite a few of the pavilions here have rooftop gardens, but those are flat. And as you can see, India's here is a dome. Even so, they managed to create an elaborate rooftop garden complete with Indian spices and herbs. Here at the New Zealand Pavilion, it is just as lively on the outside as it is on the inside. As you make your way into the pavilion, you can walk along this beautiful rooftop garden with native New Zealand plants, and then down below, we're all watching a Maori warrior dance. As you walk from pavilion to pavilion, you'll see many of them are made of recycled materials. If you're not walking, another great way to get around the expo is by electric cart or electric bus. They are clean, they are quiet. In fact, so quiet, you don't even hear them coming. In fact, nearly all of the vehicles at the expo are electric. Everything from buses to shuttle cars. With this kind of near vehicular silence, you kind of wish the future was here now. The biggest threat to a better city is the car. Traffic, noise, pollution, all conspiring to make life in some cities unbearable. Just get a look at the streets of Shanghai. And it's getting worse as more people buy cars in developing countries like China. The current rate of growth is not sustainable. It will transform the world's cities into smog and traffic-choked urban nightmares. But at the SAIC GM Pavilion, the future is not a nightmare. The future is a zero-emissions utopian dream you can experience yourself. The SAIC GM Pavilion is located on the western part of the expo. SAIC is GM's partner in China. Here's what it looked like under construction. The pavilion is 6,000 square meters. Its show-stopping feature is a round movie theater with motion seats. The pavilion's theme is Drive to 2030. Inside, you'll be transported to the year 2030 with a movie you have to buckle up to see. A few days before the pavilion opens, the director of its multimedia extravaganza is rehearsing his show. He gives us a rare behind-the-scenes look at his work in progress. Because it's just a rehearsal, the dancers are not yet in costume. Even so, they have their steps down. But the real stars of the show are the cars. That big old car you're driving around right now? Forget about it. The vehicle of the future is not even going to be called a car. It's a personal mobility device. This is GM's NV concept vehicle. NV stands for Electric Network Vehicle. It's powered by 2 electric motors, one in each of its driving wheels. They take up just 1/3 of the footprint of today's cars. This bizarre buggy is called the Yez. If you think it looks like a leaf, it's intentional because in Chinese, Yezi means leaf. The roof absorbs solar energy. Spinning rotors on the wheels generate power from the wind. According to GM, electric vehicles like these are only half the solution to city traffic problems. The other half is city infrastructure itself.
The real differentiator that we think that GM has a technology leadership in the area of is really connectivity, which is communication between vehicle and also communication between vehicle and infrastructure. The infrastructure means, the road infrastructure and also the energy infrastructure. So that really allows our vehicles to be a lot more intelligent and then almost has, a kind of a human brain type of capability to sense what's around and to think what it needs to do and then to act based on, its thinking process.
In other words, the streets of the future will be smart. Your vehicle and the road will communicate like a computer and network. The smart streets will talk to your car and everyone else's. The whole network is so smart that you'll be able to switch your car to autonomous driving mode. You can hand over control and work, sleep, or text at will. What happens to Mom in the minivan?
while all the soccer moms do not need to worry about that anymore, because if the vehicles can drive on their own in the future, then all those little kids, I mean, the vehicles itself will be intelligent enough to take the kids to the school, drop them off off the soccer practice, and then that's another level of personal mobility.
The future infrastructure could even move traffic to give emergency vehicles priority. It's a grand vision, but will it be real? We heard about, the George Jetson cars, of the future back in the 50s. We were thinking about flying cars, and we still didn't get there. Are you concerned at all that maybe this might be pie in the sky and that we might not be able to reach that by 2030?
One of the reasons that we defined the whole theme at year 2030 is this is the time frame that if everybody start to act now, not only from the automotive industry, but also from the government, the urban planners, and the other industries, this is the time it will take to change the infrastructure for the entire society. And just as an example, one of the inspirations that we had for this project actually was from the 1939 New York Expo. During that Expo, GM, for the first time, presented this whole concept, this whole notion of superhighway. 15 years later, the first highway appeared, and 20 years later, the entire highway system connected West Coast with the East Coast, and it totally changed, the life and the whole society.
Woohoo! So you're sold on one of these personal mobility devices before you trade in your gas-guzzling SUV. Unfortunately, delivery isn't expected until 2030. The real question here is, can we all afford to wait that long? It's empty right now, but it sure won't be for long. We're on the elevated walkway that runs the course of the Expo. Think of it as a sort of pedestrian superhighway. Take a look over here. That is the country of Russia. And then just across the street, that's Canada. In fact, you could walk the world in under an hour. Here we are at one of the main entrances, and if I can coin an old real estate expression, the three most important things: location, location, location. And here at the Shanghai World Expo, as you can see behind me, the USA Pavilion has a prime location. The Chinese gave the US Pavilion a place of prominence.
This area really does anchor what's called Zone 3, which is from North America all the way through to Latin America. And this part of the Expo is at the end of a 2-mile stretch of the national pavilions, the top of which is anchored by the China Pavilion.
Right.
So you really do have a visual sense, if you could take an aerial photo, that in some sense the US and China are anchoring the world. And it's just a fantastic sight.
Right now, it's hard to imagine the World Expo without the USA Pavilion. After all, the World Expo is like the Olympics of culture. Every major nation in the world is here, even relatively smaller countries like Kazakhstan. Chances are everything you know about the country of Kazakhstan comes from the movie Borat. Well, Kazakhstan is here at the World Expo. Like every other country, their objective is to nation brand and hopefully educate the public about the real Kazakhstan, Cuba. There are countries represented here from all around the world, both big and small. Why, there's Cuba. But just over a year ago, America's presence at this world event was in doubt. Why? Financing. The USA Pavilion's theme is Rise to the Challenge, but finding over $60 million to build the pavilion proved to be its own challenge. Unlike other countries, the U.S. federal government does not fund its pavilion. In fact, the United States was a no-show at the 2000 World Expo in Hanover, Germany. If the U.S. was going to be in Shanghai in 2010, it would require a team that was up to the task. You did it.
We did it. We rose to the challenge.
It's not by accident that you had that theme, right?
At first, it was a more abstract theme. But as it turned out, we had to rise to a very, very big challenge, which was, could we galvanize enough support within the U.S. government and within the business community.
After a strong push from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the support from mostly corporate sources came in at the last possible moment, after every other nation had already broken ground.
We broke ground later than any other pavilion.
After breaking ground in June 2009, it was a race against time to be ready for the world less than a year later. The USA Pavilion is over 64,000 square feet. The steel structure is meant to convey an eagle, stretching its wings in welcome. By the time you're watching this, the World Expo will be well underway, but right now we're less than 48 hours from the grand opening. We're here in front of the USA Pavilion, and the theme here is Rise to the Challenge. Let's see if they can. When you first step inside, you experience an area known as Overture.
A presentation would happen in here, which we call Welcome to America. And we actually went across America and asked people from all walks of life to do their best job at saying welcome in Mandarin.
Look right into the camera.
Welcome to America, scene 1, take 3, mark.
欢迎光临美国馆。
你好。
你好。
好。
你们好，希望你们喜欢这场表演。
Good.
Thank you.
The Overture area leads to a sequence of theaters, each of which tells one act of a very special American story. In Theater 1, people see the spirit of America.
You, on behalf of the American people, to the USA Pavilion at Expo 2010.
It's about partnerships because we can't work independently and reach the biggest solution.
We are bound by our common humanity and our shared curiosity. This includes the hopes we share with the people of China and the people around the world to work together to realize a healthy, sustainable, and prosperous future.
In Theater 2, a film called The Garden tells the story of a young girl who turns a vacant lot into an urban garden. You're using cinema to tell that story. Why did you choose that path?
The way to have an emotional impact and to leave people with a strong memory, but also get them thinking, is to tell a story.
If the theater benches look a little Spartan, it's because they're designed to fit as many people as possible.
I think people will come away with what we call an emotional souvenir. I think that they will really understand what we're trying to say. And that was the reason we got involved with this project from the very beginning, is that we wanted to take this opportunity to directly communicate who we are, our values, how we do things in a way to people that they felt a sort of refreshing grasp of America.
An estimated 6 million Chinese people will experience the American Pavilion at the Expo. And on day 1 of the Expo, they're already lining up in droves. But there will be millions of Chinese that will never get to travel to the United States. So this really is their experience.
Yes.
What's the one takeaway you think they're going to come away with after having gone through the USA Pavilion?
I do hope that what they come away with is, I would really love to visit America someday, or I would really love to go to school in America someday.
As some of the first paying Expo goers exit, let's see what they think of their emotional souvenir. What did you think? What did you make of the experience?
Oh, we loved it.
Did you? Are you from the States?
Yes,
we live in Connecticut. The shows were fantastic.
They were.
So I think it was very well done. It really spoke about what Americans, I feel Americans are.
So do you feel
community-oriented and giving from your heart? And
so
that second show, incredible.
Did it make you cry?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So whatever part of the Rise to the Challenge theme visitors here take away, few will ever realize how much the USA Pavilion had to rise to its own challenge just to be here. The really cool thing is you can traverse the Americas from Canada, the US, down through Central and South America in just a few square blocks. In fact, there's Venezuela. For some, trekking across Nepal is a sort of rite of passage. Very short trek across the Expo grounds, you'll find the Nepal Pavilion. And as you can see, it's a really popular spot for a photo op. In 1889, France hosted the World Expo in Paris. Only then they called it Exposition Universelle. One of the structures built specifically for the 1889 Expo became the symbol of Paris, the Eiffel Tower. More than 120 years later, France has just completed another World Expo structure, this time in Shanghai. The French Pavilion is over 64,000 square feet. It's wrapped in a concrete mesh that's supposed to give it a floating appearance. The pavilion's theme is the sensual city.
You can't tell from the outside, but here at the French Pavilion, the theme is sensual city. Once you're inside, you're supposed to be able to experience the sights, the smells, the taste, the feel of France. So let's find out if the French Pavilion really lives up to its reputation as a sensual city.
Your first steps into the pavilion lead you onto a welcoming patio complete with a unique plant structure.
When you live in a big high tower, you open the window. Most of the time you can't open the window.
Right.
But if you open the window, you have no birds, no nature. So with a vertical garden, it actually has two benefits. First, you take advantage of the height, and even if you're high, you still have a garden. And second, on a 6,000 meter square surface of a building, you have more than 2,000 meters square of green.
As you enter the pavilion's interior, the sensual experience begins. It turns out that by sensual, at least in this case, the French mean they want to appeal to your senses. 5 senses to be exact: taste, sound, smell, touch, and sight. The idea is to make visitors experience a French city through all 5 senses. The first sense, taste, as evoked through French cuisine. Visitors can see chefs preparing French dishes with French ingredients. By seeing it, you can almost taste it, but not quite. One of the stops on the sensual tour is smell. But how do you let people experience the smells of a French city?
So their smells are in these cones?
Yeah, it's an odorama.
Odorama.
So it's different smells of the city.
And what's in this
You
one?
go inside, and then you have, go inside.
Just go inside?
You have a cartoon.
Oh.
This one is the morning smell. You know, you have the sugar, the coffee, the jam, the croissant.
I like that.
But you have also pollution ones, tobacco ones. You have the smell of the lawn after water, after the rain. All those kind of typical smells from French cities.
As for your sense of hearing, the French Pavilion entices you to hear the sounds of a city through 10 French films from the 1940s through today.
There she is.
And then as you move, you can also perceive the sounds. This is a more contemporary one. This is Gérard Depardieu in the 1970s.
Oh, yes. Yep.
You can't reach out and touch Paris, but the French Pavilion appeals to your sense of touch by offering textures of French cities, pieces of road, sidewalk, and buildings.
You can travel just by blindly, by touching a little bit, and then you know a little bit where you are, you know. Because every city, they also have their own texture, their own skin.
The 5th sense the French are trying to appeal to is your eyesight, and the sights on display here are making eyes pop. Judging from reactions, the real showstoppers of this pavilion are 7 priceless masterpieces of French art. The art is on loan from France's Orsay Museum, and this is the first time it's been displayed in China.
These are originals, they're not
Yes, they're a complete original. This is a complete original Rodin. The insurance value of the whole is 1 billion euro.
Visitors here can see a sculpture by Auguste Rodin, The Age of Bronze, Jean-François Millet's The Angelus, Edouard Manet's The Balcony, Paul Cézanne's Woman with a Coffee Pot, Vincent van Gogh's The Dance Hall in Arles, Paul Gauguin's The Bananas, and Pierre Bonnard's The Toilet. Visitors here can get closer to the art than they could in France, and they're even able to photograph it.
Yeah, because we have a special glass, bulletproof, everything. The paintings, they are concerned in 22 degrees, everything we take care of, and we have an anti-flash kind of thing. So,
On the way out, you can complete the experience with some French food. or head to the gift shop and check out some French perfume created just for the World Expo. Beautiful.
So you can recognize the shape of the building, and it's made with magnolia.
Magnolia, because that's
The
flower.
city, the flower of Shanghai.
I'm smelling pepper. I'm smelling magnolia. Here, smell that. Oh, voila. So, did the French Pavilion live up to its reputation as sensual city? I'd have to say, oui, oui. You know, there are any number of different ways a country can choose to represent itself at these exhibits, but the really cool thing about the German version is that it hits you on so many different levels from the moment you walk in. At the German Pavilion, those levels are contained in 4 structures that look like they're levitating. The pavilion exterior looks like it's metal, but it's actually made of a special mesh fabric. The German theme is Balanced City. Yes, they actually invented a word for their theme. Back in 2009, while the German Pavilion was still being built, I asked the German designers to explain the theme.
It's called Balanced City.
Balanced City.
It's a combination of balance and city, of course. Like it's the whole pavilion is like a balancing act.
And you can demonstrate that for me between the two of you, can't you?
Of course.
Show me how this works.
It's actually the volumes are like balancing like this.
Like the, okay, so even though they're slightly, he's a little larger.
Yes, the idea is that each part for itself is not stable. So the buildings, they stabilize them together in a corporate image in a way, and this is the idea what we want to transport also to China, telling so we can change things together.
The idea is the sustainable cities of the future need balance between industry and nature, as well as work and play. The German Pavilion is on the Pudong side of the Expo, next to its real-world neighbors, France, Switzerland, and Poland. Just before World Expo's official open, the German Pavilion's Marion Conradi was my guide through Balanced City. This is the beginning.
Yeah, this is how our visitors enter Balanced City. It is our tunnel, all about transportation, and yeah, we just would like the visitors to forget what they experienced before, and they should feel to get in Balanced City and getting closer to the inner city.
Then you're in the harbor. As you move up the escalator, it feels like you're floating up through a body of water, breaking the surface. This area is supposed to evoke a futuristic Hamburg, Germany's harbor city. The first stop, the planning office, where plans are being developed for the city of the future.
Like buildings, public buildings with sustainable energy ideas.
Then a walk into the garden area where these big red hats do something strange.
This is the so-called garden. This is about private space.
What are these?
The heads are talking. You should get under. Yes.
One of the next major stops is the depot, which displays many of the products manufactured in Germany.
So now we are in a so-called depot. It's a kind of storage room. All the products you can see here are ready to be sent out from Germany to the rest of the world.
Some of them look very familiar.
Yeah, already existing, very, very nice for everyday life. And they make a better city, and of course a better life. And they are made in Germany or created in Germany.
Those products have to be manufactured somewhere, which leads us to the next area, the factory. To balance out industry, a city needs parks, and this whimsical park is the next stop at Balanced City. Stick your head into these viewing bells and you can get a 360-degree view of real German parks. After the park, it's the city square where people get together to eat, drink, protest, and have fun. That fun might even include a little opera karaoke.
Bunt, bunt sind alle meine Kleider, bunt, bunt, bunt ist alles, was ich habe.
It's hard to top opera karaoke, but it's not over yet. The final stop is the climax of the German Pavilion, the energy source. Here, visitors are confronted with a one-ton, 3-meter diameter sphere which dangles before them like a pendulum. That sphere is covered with over 400,000 LEDs. So what's the big deal? Well, visitors eventually figure out that the sphere reacts to the noise they make. When the crowd works together, they can make that sphere do some amazing things. The whole thing is controlled by a sophisticated motor high above that reacts to the crowd's noises. The sphere was built in Stuttgart, Germany. The whole process took a year and a half. During the 7-minute show, the energy sphere reacts to the audience and glows with images and colors related to the Better City, Better Life theme. After you're done shouting, you may need to recharge your own energy sphere with some German food and drink.
Sauerkraut and sausage. Oh,
Einmal Weißbier.
beautiful. Dankeschön.
Vielen Dank. Cheers.
Vielen Dank. Okay. Wow. Oh. Oh, great. Vielen Dank. Thank you. Wow. Well, there's your sauerkraut and the Expo. Here at the Thai Pavilion, while you're waiting in the long lines to get inside, they're providing a little cultural diversion with costumes and Thai folk dance. Most countries had to adhere to strict budgets when they designed and built their pavilions, but not so with Saudi Arabia here. They had no budget. As you can see, sky's the limit. Imagine the World Expo grounds as a dirt lot, but a year ago, that's what it was. Back then, we sat in that dirt lot with the architect of Finland's pavilion. Beautiful. Is this the pavilion?
This is the pavilion. The name of the pavilion is Kirnu, which is, refers to giant's kettle, which is a rock formation in the Finnish nature, which was pressed down by ice age. So that is the void of the rock inside the rock. So basically, the aim was to create a similar space inside this pavilion. So that is the whole in terms of the pavilion.
6 months later, crews labored to make the architect's vision of Kirnu real, and the Finnish pavilion was finished.
This kind of project is so that you work, like 80% of the project, you work with the idea and the vision. And then suddenly here, in a very short period of time, you suddenly see all those visions to come through. So that is the best reward you can get from any work or assignment.
The Finnish pavilion is almost 10,000 square feet. The pavilion's theme is well-being, competence, and the environment. Finland's round saucer-like pavilion gives you the illusion that it floats on a pool of water. Get closer and you'll notice its scaly exterior. In keeping with the green theme, we're here at the Finnish Pavilion, and you'll notice that the outer shell is comprised of something that looks an awful lot like fish scales, but they're not really fish scales. They're scales made up of recycled paper and plastic, some 25,000 of them.
The idea actually came from fish scales and also from very traditional Finnish roofing using small elements and which can follow any form imaginable. And since Kirnu is asymmetric, the architect chose to have this kind of one element which you can cover the whole scale of Kirnu.
Walk into the pavilion's courtyard, look up, and you will see the sky in an elegant circular frame.
Yes, it starts with these larger concepts. Here you can see that you're flying very low. You're flying and entering the building through the gate. And then you come to the courtyard, and then you look up, then there's the sky.
Wow.
And actually which was interesting, that it's the same sky as on a Finnish island. So that is the point, that you take the sky and that is the element of nature.
The interior of the pavilion showcases Finnish ideas and products like these sleds.
This is just a modern approach to a very traditional way to move around when the roads freeze down and the rivers and the sea. So you just stand on these metal heels and you just kick yourself forward. It goes crazy fast.
The idea here is to give people a sense of the Finnish way of life. The sounds and images almost make you feel like you're floating.
And now we've entered the future.
Yes, that is right. So this is what we call the city of future. This projection tells about what happens when you have right kind of, you have an education system, you have kind of people, you have different kind of technologies. So this is like a visual representation of what the city of dreams could be like.
When the expo ends, many of the structures here will have to be dismantled, including the Finnish Pavilion. But that doesn't mean Kirnu will become landfill.
The whole Kirnu is from the beginning, it is designed to be a permanent building. So it will be quite unwise to design this kind of construction just for 6 months. So the Kirnu is going to be staying in China, but it has to be dismantled from the Expo and changed to another location.
One possibility being talked about is it becoming a restaurant. And who knows, it may even be a restaurant that specializes in fish soup.
Sadly, nearly all the pavilions will be dismantled after the expo, but some will remain as part of Shanghai skyline, like that spaceship-looking thing there. That is the Performance Center, and it will host everything from rock concerts to symphonies to NBA-sanctioned basketball, with superstars like Kobe, LeBron, and hometown boy Yao Ming. Why does the small country of Luxembourg have such a big presence here at the World Expo? Well, maybe it's because it's trying to make a big impression. Imagine if the U.S. packed up the Statue of Liberty and brought it right here to the Expo. Well, that's essentially what the country of Denmark has done with its national landmark, the Little Mermaid. They brought it right here to the Danish Pavilion, and this is the real thing. One of the more downright weird structures is the Japanese Pavilion over there. It's purple, it's got these ear things jutting out of it. Looks like something straight out of an anime movie or Pokemon. I'm really curious to find out the thinking behind the Japanese Pavilion, and apparently so are a lot of people.
Word has gotten out that there's something unique about the Japanese Pavilion. 2 days after the expo has opened, the wait is about 3 hours. The Japanese Pavilion is 64,000 square feet. It cost $140 million. The pavilion's theme is harmony of the hearts, harmony of the skills.
From the outside, this is such an unusual looking building. It looks almost like a creature. Explain to me what the idea is behind this pavilion.
This pavilion is very functional. It has 3 horns and 3 holes, and it can take the air and water from the earth and also from the sky. And so it can cool down the temperature. And so we call it breathing organism.
The entire exterior is a lightweight pillow-like membrane, the first of its kind. That pillow surface even has built-in flexible solar panels.
Can you tell me, what does it resemble?
It resembles silkworm, and so we asked the Chinese citizens the nickname of this pavilion, and finally we chose the nickname Purple Silkworm Island.
Inside this strange structure are several areas or zones, all with one unified message: the deep connection between Japan and China.
Historically, China and Japan have been rivals, and yet the message here is harmony. Can you explain to me?
Yes, in modern age, we have some rivalry, but looking back long term, in our pavilion, we just start Japanese ship to go to Tang Dynasty 1,300 years ago, and we sent so many ships to China to learn the Chinese culture, including Chinese character, textile, pottery, or even Buddhism.
The pavilion uses the story of an endangered bird to highlight Japanese and Chinese cooperation. The crested ibis is one of Asia's most beautiful birds. It had gone extinct in Japan, but China had a few of the birds in captivity. They gave Japan a pair of their birds, which Japan bred. Today, there are 100 of the rare birds in Japan. That's a touching story, but what would the Japanese pavilion be without some cool technology? Well, here's a quick rundown of what you might see from Japan in the future. Floors that generate electricity whenever people walk on them. Cameras that can sense when a face smiles. A so-called living wall that will be your new window to the world. Interact with it through hand gestures. This Toyota robot plays the violin, but the hope is these robots will be the future caretakers of Japan's aging population. During the final climactic presentation, the Toyotas of tomorrow make an appearance. But then the vehicles of the future drive off, and the pavilion's final message is relayed through a much more traditional form.
For instance, at the end, is that just Chinese opera, or explain to me?
The final, the musical, we call it, is the combination between Chinese Kung opera and Japanese no play. So Japanese musical producer and the Hong Kong musical producer work together very hard to combine the good mixture of Japan and China. And the performer, all Chinese, but the composer of that music was Japanese. So it's a whole good combination between China and Japan.
Many pavilions are just one big building, but the Dutch have built an entire street. And in fact, they're so optimistic about the future, they're calling it Happy Street. We're now inside the China Pavilion in front of the Shanghai Pavilion. And you'll notice behind me the gate. Symbolism, of course, is that Shanghai is the gateway into China for the world. The history of Shanghai has been one wild ride, but at the Shanghai Pavilion, you can experience that wild ride yourself. Once inside, you realize you're not going to see just any movie. The theater is round. The film will be projected 360 degrees around you, plus onto the ceiling. Now, you've heard of 3D movies. They call this 6D, and it's going to take 10 projectors to do it. Your ears will be surrounded by sound from 10 speakers plus 4 subwoofers. Sit or stand on a round platform, but either way, strap yourself in and hold on tight. It's a hydraulic platform that will move during the movie. We're told the best advice for seeing this movie is to hang on tight. The movie opens on the sea near Shanghai. Sound, vision, movement, plus wind and mists of water combine to make you feel like you're on a boat as you head up the Huangpu River into Shanghai. The journey starts in 1850 and takes you through Shanghai's amazing history. But the story doesn't end in present-day Shanghai. It continues into the future to a vision for a better, greener city in the year 2050. And just when you think the film can't get any more immersive, a real-life surprise descends from above. The movie chronicles 200 Shanghai years, past, present, and future. It's not time travel, but it may be the closest thing to it. I feel like I'm spinning when I get out of the theater and meet the film's director, Sherwood Hu, and its producer, Dino Herman.
I always have this dream. I want to put the new media, film, Hollywood movie magic, Broadway, Las Vegas, all together. I want to focus on vehicles through the history of Shanghai city.
Right,
and then
beautiful.
The vehicle takes us going through all the eras and also make it entertaining.
Right.
We have a great sound designer, Francois Blignon, who's an excellent sound designer on this. So it's the team really. It's great. A speaker system. It's a 10.4 speaker system. It's also not done in usual cinema, so we went way beyond what a regular theater can do.
Okay, so is it worth waiting several hours in line to see a 9-minute movie? If you want to be moved, literally moved by Shanghai's history, then yes, it is. The Shanghai Pavilion is located at the base of the China Pavilion. It's one of over 30 pavilions in the base that showcase China's many provinces. Highlights of the China Province pavilions include Shanxi. These human forms in traditional provincial costume almost seem to be wax figures until they blink. But wait, they're still not human. They're just incredibly lifelike robots programmed to blink. Terracotta warriors also originate from Shanxi Province. Here they shake hands with the World Expo's mascot, Hai Bao. The Yunnan Province displayed dinosaur fossils, and the Tibet Pavilion mesmerized with its ethnic dance. Off in a distance there, perhaps the most stunning building on the Expo grounds. It's the China Pavilion, the host country. Kind of hard to miss. It's the largest pavilion in the history of the World Expo. It towers at 220 feet high. Its rooftop stretches 460 feet across, the equivalent size of 2.5 football fields. It is so colossal, you don't have to be at the Expo to spot it. You could be on the highway between Pudong International Airport. You can be aboard a ferry on the Huangpu River. You could be in any number of places in Shanghai. The city has many iconic landmarks, the Colonial Bund District, and modern architectural wonders like Oriental Pearl TV Tower and World Financial Center, also known as the Bottle Opener. But now you can add the China Pavilion to that vaunted list of iconic Shanghai architecture. Its ancient Daogung Chinese design, albeit on a monster scale, is like nothing else in Shanghai.
Very interesting to notice that why this building was chosen is because Shanghai is a very westernized city because of the colonial past. So you see a lot of mixed culture between East and West, and we don't really have a structure like this.
The striking thing about the China Pavilion, besides its size, is the color red. But there's not just one color red, there are 4 shades of red. Darker on top and lighter on the bottom. And as you can see, it's almost impossible to tell where one shade begins and the other ends.
It's looks like a unity of color, but actually it's made up of different shades. So we think it's a very good illustration for the philosophy of unity with difference, which is very important in the Chinese school of philosophy.